Hey humans, this is Tom Jacobs. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, energy worker channel at tdjacobs.com and also healingsuicide.com. And this is recorded for EA Zoom meetings for June 27, 2019. This presentation is on Chiron, and I'm going to present to you my unique take on Chiron that goes beyond psychological interpretations and into a more, well, we might say spiritual, but a more consciousness-based, energetic, emotional approach. Like we, as humans, as energetic beings, we experience energy and we respond with emotion. And I'm going to give you an idea of how to work with this in some conscious ways with the goal of explaining how to get beyond the wounded healer phase. As we'll explore, we have, you know, the wounded or wounded healer, and it can seem as though that's, it's a dichotomy. We can be in one phase or the other, and I have a different idea on how to work with this. Okay, so we're going to get into this now. First, 2 months ago in April, I taught in this space. I did a video on reconnecting with instinct regarding Lilith. Lilith is one of the archetypes that I kind of focus on and specialized in for about 15 years as of 2019 now. And so I want to just tell you briefly that I have a new home study healing course for Lilith. If you like that teaching, you'll like the healing course. And that's called Loving Lilith, an End to Shame. And it's about undoing the patriarchy in your own emotional history. It's not an astrology course, but it's based in my astrology teachings. It's channeled from the Ascended Master I work with, Jehudi, who's also known as Hermes and Thoth and Saint Germain and Merlin. So now I wanted to give you that follow-up that I've been producing that for a few months, and now that is available through tdjacobs.com. All right, so moving on to Chiron. Let's kind of start at the beginning. Discovered in 1977. So, some decades, but not a terribly long time. We refer to it as a centaur. It's classified that way. A planetoid, right? It has minor planet and comet designations from astronomers. So this is unique. It could be a comet caught by the sun's gravitational pull from far away. And perhaps it fits the definition of a dwarf planet. I was reading, just checking up on some numbers before preparing the presentation, and I saw a note that that Michael Brown, of lots of discovery fame, including Eris and other things, had noted that it seems like it's just over this basic, the line of basic definition of maybe being a dwarf planet too, at least with one metric. So anyway, so that's possible. Anyway, there's a lot of things which changing in how we understand ourselves and what Chiron is and how it introduces otherness and difference and uniqueness. And it might not be here forever. I mean, if it's a comet that got caught by the sun's gravitational pull, maybe it won't be here forever. Who knows? Okay. So it's got an elliptical orbit. Usually it's between Saturn and Uranus, yet it does cross inside Saturn's orbit and outside Uranus's orbit for parts of its cycle, which is its orbital period is 50.42 years. As you probably know, people around age 50 have a Chiron return where they have to reckon with certain Chiron things. Now, because it's so elliptical, it spends over 8 years each in Pisces and Aries. And then it spends, maybe 1.5-ish years, a little more in Virgo and Libra. So it's not, just, like we say with Uranus's 84-year orbit, it's, 7 years per sign, or Jupiter, it's, however many years. It's kind of skewed because of this. So I want to put your attention on, if you have Chiron and Pisces or Aries, you're part of a large cohort, and your transits can, right now, Chiron in early Aries means that it's near that longest point, right? The place where it spends the most time, in Pisces and Aries. So anyway, so transits of Chiron right now are taking forever. Whereas when Chiron's in Virgo, Libra, or somewhere close to Virgo or Libra, they'll take less time because Chiron will be moving quicker. It's just an interesting little tidbit to think about when you're watching an elliptical, a planet or planetoid that has such an elliptical orbit. It's quite a difference over 8 years in Pisces and Aries, and under 2 years in Virgo and Libra. It's quite a large difference there. So Chiron in myth, this is the predominant one that we use in astrology. He's a centaur. He's got eccentric skills, lots of different things that he does. He lives on the edge or the pale of society. Um, he teaches heroes before their quests. He's known for this. He's sought out. He's very valued because the unique combination of knowledge that a hero or somebody on some huge quest would need combines a lot of different kinds of things. Now, then at some point, Chiron gets wounded by a poisoned arrow. Some people say he developed the poison himself. Some say he nicked himself. Some say that somebody else inadvertently nicked his foot or his thigh, which thigh, left or right, all these different variables in here. But the basic idea is he gets wounded by poison, or he gets poisoned, and he can't die because he's immortal. So he uses his healing skill, quite considerable healing skill, but he can't heal and he can't die. So at some point, he makes a deal with Zeus to trade places with Prometheus, who was, and he gave up his immortality in the process. Prometheus, I like to say this particular phrase, who was having his liver rather inconveniently eaten out every day by a giant bird, by a vulture or an eagle, depending on the telling that you find, the story, the narration you find. But anyway, the liver grows back, and then the bird comes back the next day, and it's a perpetual punishment. And so he's able to trade places with Prometheus, giving up his immortality, so he dies. Chiron dies. Prometheus goes free. So the idea comes through this myth that one cannot heal one's own wound. You'll hear this as you learn about Chiron in astrology. People have latched on to this idea that you're either wounded or you're wounded and a wounded healer. So it's what I call an apparent dichotomy. Now, but Chiron can heal. This is what you'll learn typically. You can heal others with the same pain, but you can't heal your own, right? Prometheus is unending suffering. Well, there's Chiron. Hey, I'm unendingly suffering. Let's figure. So that's the idea with the wounded healer. You might not be able to heal yours, but you can help somebody else with the same pain. So it can appear from our astrology studies that we can be wounded or wounded healer, right? Kind of getting stuck in this dichotomy. Or go back and forth, which is really prevalent in human experience because the wound is said to never leave. Now, to me, this teaches some things that feel disempowering. For instance, certain kinds of pain can't be healed. We do have that in our collective consensus mindset. You know, certain things, the loss of a child, you'll never heal from the loss of a child, or certain things, right? Like the loss of a parent, you never really heal. You know, different kinds of, not truisms, but different kinds of things are said about pain that can't be healed, or my heart is broken and I can't, all these images about how pain can't be healed. It feels disempowering to me. Okay. And then also you're either in pain or helping others with pain, but you're still in pain because it can't be healed. The story seems to teach that. Next is you can suffer or deal with others' suffering, or both. Like, this doesn't sound fun. And then taken to its logical conclusion, even in the story, death is preferable to suffering. So if you know about my work, you know that when I read stuff that, it doesn't sound right, I think about it and try to come up with a different interpretation. So how I responded when I felt into all of this was like this. I do not want to hear another disempowered interpretation. I do not, I was just really kind of like, this cannot be what I'm learning right now. And then I transitioned into, this is not true. Okay. So then after some years, I came up with this other teaching, which says, okay, I can stop shouting at you now. We can deal with pain if we learn how. So let's take this myth as telling us a story given the best tools that our forebears had. But let's understand that myth is always social instruction, where a group says, this is kind of how to understand these things about life or ourselves, or who you should be or who you should not be. Okay, we can deal with pain if we learn how. If we learn to hold space for emotion, sensitivity, and vulnerability. So that's where I'm going with this. Now we're going to talk about another Chiron myth. He is rejected at birth by his mother. Do I have to say anything else? This is major. This is a formative pain. So for me, the poisoned arrow thing, I was going to say wounded arrow. The poisoned arrow thing is, well, I'll get to it. Anyway, so I think that's the second wound. The rejection at birth by his mother is the first wound. So can you see how this is so deeply significant that we should look at it? Think about the difference between like, I have an injury or I have a sickness and it just doesn't heal versus I emerge into the world and my mother rejects me. That will shape my entire life. So here's a story. His mom, I don't know how to say her name. It's either Philyria or Philyria. Anyway, it starts with a PH if you want to look it up. PhilYria, I believe. Anyway, so she is a forest nymph or something. She's minding her own business. Kronos sees her and says, oh, I got to get with her. She says, no way, takes the form of a horse and runs away. He takes the form of a bigger horse, overtakes her, and rapes her. Yes, that's what this is about. That's what this Chiron thing is about. I'm just reminded of something else I want to tell you in a bit. So that's kind of his conception story. Now, when the baby's born, the baby's a centaur. He's half horse, half humanoid. She did not expect this. Why would she? She went back to her humanoid shape and okay. So then the mother, she shouts at when she sees him, get this monster away from me, or something like that, which is a rejection. It is outright. It is not, okay, yeah, he's half horse. Well, I guess we'll love him anyway. No, it was get this away from me. Forget it. I am not dealing with this. And so Chiron, so this primary fundamental feeling of rejection is imprinted on him. Not being worthy of love, support, or validation. His own existence, right? The mother rejects him. Okay. So we have sometimes a feeling of either not being worthy of love, support, validation, or a feeling of being worthy of rejection. I sometimes call it rejectability, but we don't know that word because it's not a real word, so I have to rephrase it sometimes. Worthy of rejection, worthy of being rejected. So this core wound, primary from birth, fundamental, is harder to look at than the inadvertent poisoning, so we've been distracted. I don't blame us. I don't blame us because certain things hurt, like parallel to this idea of he's poisoned and he can't heal and he can't die. He uses everything he knows to try to heal himself, but it just won't work. Well, we have that experience where a breakup, a loss, a rejection, something in our family or something, the loss of a job or a career or the loss of a home or some kind of like hardship that can stay with us. It can be very distracting being in this loop of, I don't know how to heal this. I can't heal this. I can't heal this. But if you think about the rejection by his mother at birth, it cuts pretty deep. And if you think about this as an archetypal part of you and me, then there is some kind of rejection scenario archetypally that each of us is also exploring, which we're going to get into in a second. Okay, so Chiron is taken away to be raised by Apollo and Diana, who are great tutors and mentors, foster parents. I mean, they're not like parents, but they do teach him a lot of things. And wow, he learns such impressive skills from them. Apollo is a god of healing. Diana is, he learns martial arts. He learns healing from both of them. He learns all kinds of different things. But he doesn't really belong anywhere. He lives on the fringe and he's alone. So think about this. He is half horse, half human. He's a centaur, but he's not genetically related to the majority of the centaurs. So when you read in mythology the stories of Nessus and Pholus and whomever else, so these other centaurs, I don't know their names right on the tip of my tongue. they're kind of rabble rousers. They're kind of like, maybe you don't invite them to your party because they're going to get drunk and somebody's going to get hurt or killed. He's not in that lineage. He's tutored by Apollo and Diana, these reasonable people with amazing skill. And so he's not in that genetic lineage. Well, he's also not just human, right? So he doesn't fit anywhere. In the two worlds he's part of, he doesn't fit anywhere. He's by species, he's biracial, right? Okay. But he is resourceful and clever, and he comes up with new perspectives and solutions, and he can combine existing tools toward new ends. So he's resourceful and clever. So he's alone, but he's resourceful and clever. I just want to emphasize that. Because the rejection thing about Chiron can distract us, where we don't, I'll get to that. Okay, good. So archetypally, Chiron plays out this way. Unintentionally, quite often, mostly, a parent or other primary caregiver does or even energetically senses or feels something or emotionally feels something that makes a baby feel unloved, unsupported, or invalid. Won't meet the baby's gaze. Won't, hold the baby long enough, right? The baby reaches for something and the parent kind of pushes it away. All kinds of different things where the sense of rejection can play out. Obviously babies are not adults are not babies, but all the kinds of rejection scenarios where a person can feel invalidated as a baby can be we can translate into baby behavior. Okay. And a sense of rejection or not being worth love can be imprinted in the chart holder, in the person. So as I mentioned at the top, I'm a channel and an energy worker, and I do a lot of different, healing work that kind of goes beyond astrology. And I do dial into in healing sessions or consultations, people's inner kids and past life selves. And one of the things is, this Chiron wound is always imprinted, sometimes in the womb, sometimes just at birth, sometimes, up to 18 months after birth, that I notice, where I look for when's the earliest instance of this very important imprint. And it's anywhere from being in the womb to up to 18 months. And then it will be replayed over and over again because of the energetic imprint, right, that the child or the baby experiences. But anyway, this sense of rejection or not being worth love happens when we're that young and we don't know how to deal with it. Okay, so the end result in our lives is we will take too personally how others treat us or see us or respond to us. House sign and aspect of Chiron matter. We're going to talk about some of these later. But we take too personally. Think of it as making a mountain out of a molehill. And with a lot of different Chiron scenarios, I like to talk about what I call the bad burrito syndrome. And it is that the Chiron person who is sensitive to how others may react to him or her will bring up something to somebody in her personal life or somebody at his job or whatever. Hey, here's a great idea. What about this? And the other person goes, grumble, 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 grumble. And there's just stressed out look on the face. And the person whose Chiron feels very sensitive and open says, oh, I shouldn't have said anything. Oh, I'll never say anything again. Or, and when I say that to clients, usually they laugh at that point because we've all been there. And the person is taking very personally this response, but maybe that person ate something for breakfast or lunch that doesn't agree with him. Maybe she has indigestion. So you said, hey, here's this new thing. And the person goes, person is feeling bad. But the Chiron person might take it way too personally. So that's kind of how it can come out in our day-to-day, month-to-month lives. So emotionally, you may be carrying an inner infant feeling worthy of rejection. When that part of you takes over periodically, you feel helpless and clueless like the baby or the infant or toddler. And then you make poor choices. You feel those emotions totally, 100%. And you therefore may feel that you are those fears and feelings. Sometimes when I teach about this, I say, imagine you have 3 inner kids in the back of a car and you're driving the car of your life, and you say, well, in a couple of days, we're going to be in Chicago. And one of those inner kids goes, I heard Chicago was a terrible place. I don't want to go there. Well, that kid can actually mess with you from the back seat, can kick the seat, can throw food, can make noises, can like cry and scream, can reach over and pull on your ear, can, could do all these things. And you're like, no, we're going to Chicago. And this crazy kid in the back, not crazy, but this kind of crazy behavior can mess you up, even can reach over your shoulders, steer you off the road. You're in the middle of a field and you're like, what happened? I didn't do this. And then you feel like a moron. I just did that to myself. Anyway, then you feel like a moron. Not revealing my personal stories here about driving to Chicago. But then you feel like an idiot because you don't understand how you got off the road. I was just going where I said I was going to go. Because when the inner kid, these feelings take over, we feel them. They rush to the surface and occupy us. We feel that we are that kid, and that kid doesn't understand anything, except I'm afraid of not being loved. I'm afraid of being rejected. Okay. Now, let's think about Chiron a little differently as an energy antenna. Instead of saying Chiron's the wounded healer, or the wound or the wounded healer, consider it as an energy antenna. Like in your psyche, in your energy field, in your consciousness, it's picking up on energy in the world around you. Humans feel energy and respond with emotion. So it's about emotion too. Therefore, the Chiron wound is triggered in various ways through energetic cues in the world around a chart holder. And the human responds with fear of rejection, self-doubt, shame, guilt, whatever, self-loathing. I shouldn't exist. I never should have ever opened my mouth. I never should have said what I wanted to do, that kind of thing. So you feel pain. Well, you might identify with a wound. You can identify with a wound. This is the idea of wounded healer. And maybe you can get stuck in that pain. It's easy to get stuck. There is no shame in this. Like I said, if you drive yourself off into a cornfield on your way to somewhere in your life, then you might say, what happened? Why would I do that? I'm so stupid. Why would I make that mistake? It's because this inner kid freaked out and you made a poor decision, or you derailed or sabotaged yourself. So, or you can feel pain and help others who have the same pain, which means you can identify as a wounded healer. And again, maybe you can get stuck in that. It's easy to get stuck in that. There's no shame in it. Because if you perceive you can't heal your own pain, and then you work with others to try to help them, and you're somehow getting some satisfaction from that, well, you can identify as that wounded healer too and be in that groove. But again, you're feeling your own stuff, so it doesn't ever go away, or because it doesn't ever go away. So here's the deal. When you feel pain and you honor it and you don't judge yourself and you work with your inner rejected infant or toddler self, then you can own the energetic and emotional sensitivity that Chiron brings. Then you are beyond the wounded healer, no longer stuck in being defined by having pain or healing pain. I think in the Chiron book, Chiron 2012 in the Aquarian Age, the key and how to use it, I think I talk about this third phase as mastery. I've kind of edged away from that word a little bit because I don't want anyone to have this like inflated egoic thing or inflated head. But the idea of like, you own your sensitivity, you don't have to drive yourself off the road into a cornfield just because part of you is concerned. So then when you're free to feel the sensitivity of Chiron, you feel the waves of energy around you in the world and in others. And more specifically, you might pick up on others' feelings of all kinds, but your helpless, clueless emotional triggers are no longer waiting to be triggered, activated. So the inner infant then has a new compassionate parent. Like if you have a fear, it comes up. I have this I'll do a little confessional thing. I have this thing all the time in my relationship. And for me, Chiron represents or comes out as if people are unavailable. If I assert in relationship or try, people become unavailable. It's just like it's a long-term thing. But with my girlfriend, we've been together like 8 years, and I know that she loves me, but there are all kinds of scenarios where she becomes unavailable to engage, play, or do something with me. I know my trigger is to believe that I don't deserve companionship or partnership, Chiron in the 7th house. My trigger is the infant believes, the little kid believes that I'm not going to have partnership or friendship or connection or love. That if I reach out to somebody, they're going to be gone. So when I own that, the part of me that in that moment of her being unavailable is helpless and clueless, I don't let that part take over. I'm like, right, I have to be compassionate with this part. Tom Jacobs was telling me, I was telling myself, I have to be compassionate with this part. So I don't need to fear rejection. I know she loves me. So I change how that works, and that part, the helpless, clueless part, no longer takes over. I'm feeling the vulnerability. And I kind of like stop, and I remember, right, get grounded, get in your body, decide it's okay. I'm feeling that energy, but the baby doesn't take over. And, I'm 46. And I'm not saying that, as an adult, when I say there's a baby inside you who needs love and compassion, I'm not trying to say you're a baby. We have parts of us from all ages that are with us, and especially when we're imprinted with rejection, pain, fear, loss, trauma, whatever. And so in this case, we're all carrying a kid who needs to have a compassionate parent. So how to heal Chiron issues? Make a list of what you wish your parents or other primary caregivers would have been or done for you. Make a list. And it could be one thing or 100 things or 1,000 things. I think I said this to a client once. I told her to do it. She came back on the next coaching call and she was like, yeah, it was like 70 things. And I was like, yes, it could be that many. For some people, it could be encouraged me or validated my creativity or played with me or laughed with me or like took time off from work to listen to my needs or whatever. It could be, but anyway, make a list of what you wish that could have been for you or done for you. Then translate each thing into how you relate to your feelings, needs, insecurities, and fears today. And then commit to with finality to meeting those needs and honoring those feelings, etc. This is how to heal Chiron issues. Basically, take the power away from a baby who's afraid of not being loved or safe. Okay, now this always involves grieving, not feeling loved, supported, safe, etc. in the past. And therefore, it always involves tears. It always involves allowing and then embracing vulnerability. And it always involves allowing the sensitivity of this inner kid who has yet to feel welcome with his or her sensitivity and vulnerability. Always. Somebody just wrote a review on Amazon for my Chiron book. And she said something like, or he or she said something like, yeah, I think this guy's really onto something, because when you acknowledge the sensitivity, something melts and you feel more heart open. Whatever it was, she was like, yeah, I get it. And it's a process that's a little different, right? It's looking at Chiron as a different thing. But again, Chiron, it has a minor planet and a comet designation, right, from the astronomers. So it's a little different. Maybe it's a comet. Maybe it got trapped in sun's, orbital gravitational pull in an orbit. Well, it's different than other things that might have been here for a very long time in our solar system. So it's a little different, right? Okay, now we're going to talk about the natal house of Chiron, what it describes. Now, I do have a series of videos on YouTube. I don't know. They're 6, 8, 10, 12 minutes each. And I have done all of the houses. And I've done, I think, 8 of the 12 signs. I just got interrupted in my to-do list with it. But the signs where it spends the most time, right? So Virgo, Libra, and I guess Leo, and I can't remember, Scorpio. Maybe those aren't done, but 8 of them are up there. So I'm going to go briefly through the houses and signs to give you keyword ideas. And I'm going to recommend that you go to YouTube and check those things out. And then at the end of this, in a few minutes, I will do a couple of examples, a handful of just house and sign examples to give you an idea of how to track this. So in what parts of life Chiron's sensitivity to energy and emotion exists? And in what parts of life the chart holder may feel worthy of rejection? But also, I didn't write this in here, but also where that person has a unique contribution when getting beyond the wounded and wounded healer, apparent dichotomy, the person has a unique contribution where there can be this confidence in one's own uniqueness. This whole thing about getting beyond the wounded healer bit into this mastery or into this other phases, I own my vulnerability and I let it happen. I'm not numb. I'm not checking out. I'm open and I feel the energies in the world around me, but I don't have to have that scared part of me take over because I understand I have this trigger. I understand I will take certain things. I will be hypersensitive to how others respond to me or react to me. So I'm more not controlling, but I'm more in charge of myself as an energetic being. Okay, so when we're not, we know we're not worthy of rejection. When we can accept ourselves and be that parent for the inner kid, what opens up is difference, uniqueness, the maverick part of Chiron, without fearing rejection. The always difference. The way you do when your Chiron's healthy, well, anytime you're doing your Chiron, you have a different approach. When you're hypersensitive to rejection, of course, that colors everything. But when you're not hypersensitive to rejection and you accept yourself in the ways that other people haven't accepted you, then what's there is this unique way of seeing things. Chiron's always on the fringe of society doing interesting things. Remember, I emphasized resourceful, clever. That's Chiron. I also think of it sometimes as like pivoting perspective. Like I think of it as like turning on the balls of your feet to view things from a different angle, and something opens up because you're seeing it in a different way because you're not locked into trying not to be rejected or excuse me, fearing that you're not going to be loved. So you have more creativity and openness available to you. So first, let's just run through the houses briefly. First house is about body, personality, and how you show up. And sometimes what I've noticed with Chiron in the first house is some people feel like they don't have the right to exist. And that's part of their like mountain to climb or to reduce to a molehill. And might be real stories from their family where somebody kept telling them that, or the parents didn't know, or whatever, the pregnancy was accidental, or the kid wasn't planned, or something like that. But another thing that happens with Chiron natally in the first house is the person can latch on to something about his or her body that they think is worth rejecting or not worth love. And different things. Like I knew somebody once who a beautiful woman who had long legs and a kind of short torso, and it did something to her. Like she felt like that she was not beautiful. She was very beautiful. She was unique. And when I knew her, friends of mine had a kid who was born with Chiron in the first house, and I and I said this to them. This whole bit about sometimes making like a mountain of a molehill about something about the body. And it turns out the kid's ears stick out quite a lot. Well, in reality, maybe nobody cares, but the chart holder might make a big deal out of it. In this case with the ears, I don't think the kid's ever made a big deal about it. Just rolls with it. Anyway, so there can be something about or somebody's like, I think my nose is too big, and it's just your nose, right? Or always unhappy with the hairstyle, like something's wrong physically, right? That can happen with Chiron in the first house. And also showing up, being assertive, that kind of thing. I can feel rejectable. Second house, about how you use your time, energy, money, and living according to your value system. So we often think of the second house as about money and possessions. And I'd like to add to it, living according to your own values, living life on your own terms. So what skills you want to gather, or how you price your work, or something like what you value. You may value something that is unique and different and fear rejection for it. And again, how you use your time, energy, money. So, everybody else might be, I've used this example over the years. Somebody else might be, or everybody's learning Spanish, and somehow you're like drawn to learn some other language where people don't see the point. But you have a unique perspective on what is useful, what tools may be useful. Fear about money can be a huge thing with Chiron in the second, because Chiron in the second says, I don't know what I'm worth. I don't feel like I'm worth anything, or I feel like I'm worth very little. So that's something to heal and work with. Chiron in the third house, this house of information in and out. So all things about education and learning and writing, speaking, teaching, all those things. Well, this person will have unique interests and curiosities. The person may have, anxiety when it comes to speaking in front of people or asking questions. The person might have a unique style of learning or a unique style of speaking, distinctive, right? And again, that person may feel if I communicate, I might be rejected. So that's the third house. And again, this unique interests thing also kind of indicates that the mind itself will process information in a unique way, which of course makes it very interesting when that person trusts the self, because the maverick comes up with new solutions to old problems by combining things in interesting ways. Fourth house, one's inner emotional foundation and how the person was taught to deal with emotions and needs with family. And also the fourth house is a house of belonging, whether it's family of origin, family one creates, or community or world or nation, right? Region. And so Chiron in the fourth can be that there's a rejection issue at home, or the person is afraid to assert his or her needs, or is afraid to try to belong somewhere, right? That's possible with Chiron in the fourth house. And it can also be a family full of people who are mavericks or who feel like they don't fit together. That's also possible. But more often it'll be people who don't know how to deal with their sensitivities and vulnerabilities. Fifth house is personal expression, creativity, playfulness, spontaneity, and having an opinion. And I think the first house Chiron bit is this kind of thing about the right to exist. The fifth house Chiron can kind of change a little bit into the right to take up space, the right to be heard, the right to have a seat at the table is one phrase, the right to be taken seriously as somebody with something to contribute. And one of the basic ideas here is it's about ego development and ego expression, all things that relate to that, including by extension creativity, but having an opinion. So this person might say, here's my opinion. Somebody else goes, grumble, 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 right? And then the chart holder goes, oh, I should never have said anything. So that's the fifth house. And that will have to do also with the more playful or flirty sides of sexuality and dating, and also just playing hooky or having fun, and also improvising. Like you play word association games and it's fun, and the person with Chiron in the fifth comes up with things that stop the story, and everyone goes, what are you talking about? And that person may be hypersensitive, right, to how others receive him or her. And extending that into creativity, as a kid in school making chalk drawings or charcoal drawings or whatever, there'll be something unique that people will notice. Will that kid make a mountain out of a molehill and say, I shouldn't do this because they looked at me funny, right? There's a sense of uniqueness. Sixth house, how things actually get done. Daily routine. It's also about kind of the monitoring the processes of the body. It's about being of service in important ways. Being somebody who's a good team player lands in the sixth house too. Sacrificing egoic concerns to help a team effort in some way. And it's also hierarchy in unequal relationships. Master apprentice, master slave, coach team member, these kinds of unequal relationships, boss, employee, that kind of thing. Sometimes employee-employee relationships, like we're both in this hierarchy, but sometimes power imbalances happen in the sixth house naturally. It doesn't have to always be unhappy, but there's somebody knows something and the other person is learning it over time or something. Think about master apprentice kind of situations. So Chiron in the sixth house, this, I always think of process improvement. Somebody says, here's how we do things at this new job. And the person with Chiron in the sixth will intuitively immediately see a unique way to change things. But that person may feel rejectable or not worthy of support if the person brings a unique idea. Everybody could benefit from the change. But again, will that person risk standing out or being unique, not taking any weird reactions personally? I also think Chiron is a marker of sensitivity to energy. Well, in the sixth house, I also categorize or file the energy of your body digesting things. Your macro and micronutrient ratios and balances, and are you getting enough minerals? I think that all belongs in the sixth house. First house of body is this existence thing. Sixth house of body is monitoring the processes. So Chiron there, your dietary needs or your healthcare needs might be unique. And you might feel rejected if you say, I don't want to take an antibiotic because I know that messes with the biome in my gut. And everybody else is like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, we know a lot about that today, but imagine, like I was thinking about this, like as I work to heal my own gut, I think about how many rounds of antibiotics that I was on as a kid. Well, we didn't know anything about that. Okay. So anyway, so that's a sixth house. Okay. Now, seventh house is the house of the other, and it's a house of building a bridge together. It's a house of receiving from others and giving, like learning, give and take. So personal relationships of all kinds, as well as, you know, even some jobs that have to do with sales or having certain kinds of partnerships that might not be long term. Like eighth house is more like business partnerships. But anytime you're dealing with one-on-one other people, so the person might feel worthy of rejection every time he or she talks to anybody. That's possible. And there's also going to be, as far as love, dating, sexual relationships, Chiron issues coming up constantly. Like if you think about in the fifth house, every time I express my opinion, well, it's Chiron. Sixth house, every time I try to find the right macro micronutrient balance, well, there's Chiron. Seventh house, every time I'm with another person, there's Chiron. So another thing about the seventh house is that any planet or asteroid or point there, the chart holder might not know how to own that by default, own that part of the psyche. So if you don't do some part of your chart, especially something in the seventh house, this is true of anything. Like if you have Mars square Pluto and you're like, I don't want to be assertive because I don't want to fight, you know, it's true of everything in your chart, but you can create a vacuum, and you know what? Nature abhors a vacuum. So other people with those energies will rush in. So person with Chiron in the seventh house will draw Chironic others. So there's a need to sort through who's wounded, who's a wounded healer, who is mature. The person may expect rejection. I use this example all the time. Mine's in Aries in the seventh. So asserting myself in a relationship is a huge thing. And like I'm talking about it and I get a lump in my throat. Like it's still something I'm working on. It takes a long time to heal the inner kid pain of rejection. But the example I use is, let's say that I go to a coffee shop, I'm just passing through for a moment, and I see someone in the corner reading a book, which is a translation of my obscure favorite author. And I'm like, oh, like anybody would go over there in that situation and say, oh, I love that book. That, you know, she's my favorite author. And I would not do that because part of me expects everyone to say no or reject me or grumble, bad burrito syndrome. Anyway, so it's like even that kind of thing, just Aries seventh house, just like, oh, hey, yeah, I see who you are. Part of me won't do it. So seventh house is like Chiron's always there. And then of course in relationships, I'm always attracting people in some phase of wounded healer or beyond it, always. In the eighth house, we take all that stuff and take it into intimate territory, deepest psychological trust, vulnerability issues, all that kind of stuff. I know you're staring at this one slide forever and my face is tiny, but just bear with me. In the eighth house, it's a lot about trust and vulnerability. One of the secrets of the eighth house is that we have to become vulnerable to access our eighth house selves. But when we become that vulnerable, then we're vulnerable. So when somebody isn't honest with us, or somebody betrays us, or doesn't treat us gingerly or with respect, it can deeply, deeply hurt. And that can be the Chiron in the eighth wound, a deep thing about not being willing to trust. And it's a very lonely thing. It's a very lonely place to be with Chiron in the eighth house. But also, once we get beyond that phase, you know, beyond wounded healer, there is a sensitivity to deep psychological issues and an intuitive flow with sensing energy under the surface and interpreting subtext and understanding where people are coming from. That's masterful. It's beautiful. Accepting that everybody's afraid when they open up. Everybody's vulnerable when they trust somebody. Moving on to the ninth house, belief, religion, worldview, big picture, imagination, all the parts of life to do that. So higher education, like I said, belief, philosophy, religion, and also expansion, like reaching far to find a truth. With Chiron there, somebody might not think big. Somebody might not imagine too much or perceive that one, you know, his or her imaginations, if shared, would be rejected, right? This can also be unique beliefs. And this could, in a very kind of mundane kind of sense, or very kind of day-to-day life kind of sense, you know, could be somebody who grows up in a, you know, a part of the world or a part of a country where that person's religion's in the minority and that person might feel rejected for being different, you know? So there's that sense of potential rejection for what one believes. 10th house is, we think of it as career and work, but I think of it more and more these days as how we want to be part of the world. So I think about it in terms of, what do you want to see more of in the world? Can you do that? Do you want to do it? So it's about achievement and, accomplishment and ambition, but it's also about helping shape the world, contributing something to the world. But something in the 10th house, a person will become a symbol of that energy for other people. So Chiron in the 10th house, person's heart might be on his sleeve. That person might seem very vulnerable all the time and make others uncomfortable. And then that person's uncomfortable because, it can be this thing where there's a very obvious sense of sensitivity this person may carry. And it can also be interested in, the person can be interested in kinds of work that deal with emotion and energy and intuitive things and sensitivity. In other words, the person's not just path to becoming respectable and competent, which are kind of Saturn kind of ideas in Capricorn in the 10th house, but also the way that person might feel ambitious. It might be unique and confusing to others. So imagine this person working, in a group environment, and everybody wants to, let's say it's a sales environment, and this person would rather have an admin job, an administrative job, instead of competing to be a salesperson, right? So that person might naturally try to stay away from, being visible to others and vulnerable by being exposed and any sensitivity. So you just kind of imagine that thing where the person might not be ambitious or let herself or let himself, do that. But again, there's a unique contribution once person gets beyond wounded healer, apparent dichotomy. A unique vision, bringing something healing to the world, perhaps. When I talk about wounded healer and getting beyond it, I don't believe that this third phase of Chiron doesn't involve healing. I believe it does. It's just I'm not stuck in my pain or your pain, but I'm dealing with sensitivity, which is actually healing. There are people who can hold space through compassionate self-love and love for others, but a compassionate, grounded place. I just think of this one, I'm just anecdote time. Years ago when I lived in Santa Monica, and I used to walk to this coffee shop near my apartment, and I ran into this dude who, as it turns out, was a Sufi healer. And he was about my age, maybe a couple years older or something. And just being around him. So this was like years ago when I still had a lot of stuff I was trying to work through. And I was like, my heart opened because of how he just sat there and held himself and engaged with me. He wasn't doing anything. And it was just profound experience where he had been trained to get into the heart. And it was a very chironic process, Sufi healing. And anyway, it was a profound half an hour or 40 minutes or whatever. And he ended up kind of doing a little session on me where asking me questions and helping me get in my heart about something. But it's like people can hold sensitivity and compassion, which are kind of like chironic healing qualities. It's not just about, chiropractic manipulation or herbs or massage, though it can be physical manipulation and chemical. It can be all those things. But it also can be emotional healing. So anyway, just think about that. The person that's Chiron in the 10th might bring something healing to the world that other people say, oh, that's interesting. Chiron in the 11th, house of groups, right? Friends, wishes, hopes, dreams. I like to think of the 11th house, which you'll hear from me again and again in these presentations, as our goals for the future, what future we want to live in. What do I want my life to look like in 3 months or a year or 10 years? But also, what world do I want to live in? What do I want my society to look like? So networks, groups, volunteer work, politics, political parties, political groups, all these kinds of advocacy or protest, all kinds of things like that fit in the 11th house. But you have to have a goal, right? And sometimes it's a revolutionary goal associated with this Uranus Aquarius archetype. But anyway, Chiron in the 11th can be unique goals and unique friends, unique groups of people the person interacts with, but can also be feeling rejected by groups. Like no matter what group I join, the person with Chiron in the 11th might feel, my voice isn't welcome, or it's never right for me to speak up. I don't feel welcome. And that feeling of being otherized or something, where Chiron, right, lives on the outside of the world and doesn't fit in either world, and he's half horse, he's half human, but he's not human, but he's not a centaur, the real, the real kind or the normal kind. So that sense of difference and otherness and not fitting, that can happen within groups and in society. This person might be really in need of a healing, of finding her own tribe, right? 11th house, kind of finding a new group. But also this imagination about what the future can look like, this kind of science fiction-y kind of looking ahead that fits in the 11th house. The person will have unique perspectives on how to get there. Cleverness, resourcefulness, new solutions to old problems. Think about that Uranus, Aquarius, 11th house archetype as including the inventor, right? The iconoclast, the revolutionary, but also the inventor. So doing things differently and come up with new solutions. Now, coming to the 12th house, houses 1 through 11, I like to teach, have to do with being in the world, being in 3D and material reality, going to work, feeding yourself, taking vitamins, saying yes and no in a relationship, starting a business or trusting people or dating or whatever, spending money or earning money, all those things, right? Houses 1 through 11. The 12th house is this multidimensional house where you're connected to the collective or the collective unconscious, masses of people, or the whole world, nature as a whole, the cosmos, multiple layers of stuff, because like my 12th house involves channeling as well as feeling in touch with global themes, right? Like Chiron's not there, but just saying 12th house living involves this connection to bigger things than your egoic personality. So Chiron in the 12th can be very often, a person may be overwhelmed by the influx of information from the world, the pain, the suffering, the whatever, the violence, the plight of the insert tragic scenario here, like the plight of this ethnic cleansing group or whatever it is, the person can be overwhelmed by that. And so the person might feel nuts and too open and weepy all the time, like seemingly absorbing stuff, but also might feel shut down to try to avoid this. So the idea of the wounded or wounded healer thing, you might feel that pain, or with a wounded healer, you might try to help all of the kittens, all of the homeless people, all of the children who have been hurt, or all of the refugees, all of the migrants, right? And then, of course, you can't help all of them. But Chiron in the 12th can also be this real call to have compassion that, groups of people and individuals go through pain, right? A higher 12th house perspective beyond the egoic, mind-based interpretation of what pain means, accepting that pain can actually drive us into compassion. That's a 12th house Chiron truth. That's 12th house truth in general. But with Chiron there's this call to remain sensitive, but not be overwhelmed. So people with 12th house planets like Moon, Neptune, Venus, Chiron, these kind of planets that can be a little absorbent and pick up energies a little more than some other planets, those ones that affect us emotionally, in more ways, or energetically, or affect our consciousness. With Chiron, a person has to make sure to move out energy, right? So different kinds of meditation or work with nature, something like that, to move energy through. When that person doesn't, like you might, I'm not making fun of anybody who is engaged in this. Sometimes when I say these things, I feel like I'm being too flippant, but like the plight of all of the homeless kittens, the feral cats, or the rescue dogs, or whatever it is. Somebody who's really focused on something like that. This idea of working hard. Well, if you work hard and it never actually gets fixed, you might feel a little burnout, but you also might feel that the universe itself is rejecting these beings, right? You might feel that sense of rejection, the love of God or something, right, toward these beings, and that might hurt you. So that's kind of how the wound can happen. But anyway, to be able to contribute something in the 12th house is very important. But with Chiron, we have to move through energy. We have to cry things out randomly, etc. So those are the houses there. Moving on to the sign, the natal sign of Chiron describes the way of being, the method of being, right? Think of the zodiac as lenses through which planets operate, or the motivation regarding which this person needs to accept this hypersensitivity and not take things too personally, and overcome that fear of rejection. So, for example, with Aries, being assertive. And by the way, I've said this before in this forum or in teaching here at the EA Zoom video dealios. I've said before, I don't equate the houses and the signs, but there are archetypal overlaps. You know, there are some things. Like the first house isn't really about assertiveness, right? For me, the first house is about all the things that have to do with your person and how you may, right, operate yourself and make choices. But Aries is about being assertive. Any planet working through Aries will try to be assertive or need to learn courage to be assertive. So Chiron and Aries, and actually if you are around age 50 right now or down to like 42, 43, you know, you have Chiron and Aries. And so it's a new round of people having Chiron returns as Chiron is now in Aries. But in Aries, a person, like I talked about, not approaching that person in the bookshop or the coffee shop about the book, you know, not wanting to assert. Well, what goes with this is also about expressing fire, right? Anger, unmediated response. Things in Aries just like sometimes they fly off the handle, but sometimes they just do something or say something. So Chiron and Aries might try to hold back fire, which can include issues with anger. Saying yes and no might be compromised. I don't want to be rejected. If I say no to you, I want you to like me. It's almost like mixing in some Libra craziness. Like I'd rather be a chameleon than have your, you know, say don't be assertive, something like that. In Taurus, any planet in Taurus has to do with going at one's own pace, slowing down to focus on what is essential, limiting chaos. So people with Chiron and Taurus need to go at their own pace, but they might be rejected for that. You know, it's actually really interesting. I've done Chiron reports and Chiron readings for people who have this, and they just sigh this huge sigh of relief, because to get the validation that with Chiron and Taurus, you have to find out what rhythm is right for you. Nobody else can do that, but everybody else might be trying to nudge you to go faster. Chiron and Gemini is a sign of being open, fluid, flexible, mutable, right? Taking in new information. Chiron and Gemini there might have to do with some things about expressing things, or it could be about learning. It could be about being willing to open to new information would be the primary thing I want to focus on here. Being open-minded, right? And also a planet in Gemini needs to be changed by what it learns. And with Chiron there's unique perspectives, and things might move very quickly. And that person, you know, the way the person communicates might be misunderstood by some others. And that person may feel rejected because like I took these two things, I connected the dots, and then I said something, and you get grumble, 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 bad burrito syndrome. Chiron in Cancer, it's not the same as the fourth house, but Chiron in Cancer is this emotional flow. All Chiron for me is about emotion to some degree, like feeling energy in the world around you or in others being triggered with your own feeling sense, your feeling function. But with Chiron and Cancer, it's about your needs. It's about feeling safe. It's about relaxing. I don't know if I can relax. And it's about reaching out emotionally and receiving emotionally. You know, being safe is a huge thing with Chiron and Cancer. Chiron in Leo, again, this any planet in Leo needs to express itself, needs to have flair and personal style, and needs to be playful. Well, the sense of playfulness is going to be a little different with Chiron and Leo. The way the person tells a joke, the way the person understands a joke. That person might actually find humor in things that no one else finds humor. You know, the thing about making a joke after a tragedy and the comedian goes too soon, that's a kind of Chiron and Leo kind of idea. Chiron and Virgo, improving things, fixing things. You know, in the sixth house, it's like organizing the 3D world. In Virgo, it's about actually the process of analysis, discernment, and fixing things, the process. So any planet in Virgo needs to make something better. And so that sense of that can be compromised, or, you know, the fear of rejection can come up with it in Virgo. In Libra, it's about balancing things and learning to connect. It's not about relationships, but it's about that process of give and take. Not the physical relationship with this person, but the whole process of learning to give and take. That's the Chiron and Libra thing. Things are going to be felt to be unfair, and the person might try to create fairness, but then feel rejected. In Scorpio, it's about feeling deeply, and it's about sometimes naming, like calling a spade, dealing with subtext, like I might feel what you feel and I don't want to feel it. I don't want to go there because, the sense of, I'm turning it negative because I'm acknowledging something is true, like I'm being the problem. So the sense of not wanting to feel too deeply or spelunk into one's own depth that is triggered by another. All planets in Scorpio will find themselves operating consciously in ways that are deeply informed by unconscious motivations. So digging, right, is a method of Scorpio. So that would be hindered if the person fears rejection for being honest or telling the truth or feeling something intense, like owning a shadow. In Sagittarius, expansiveness and searching for truth. So the willingness to have confidence and have some, take some risks. The person's risk-taking or adventure-seeking part of the self may have this. Our beliefs can change regarding this Jupiter 9th house Sagittarius archetype. Our beliefs can change, but we might, feel isolated or otherized because of our beliefs when Chiron's here. And so we might not know that we can change because we don't feel connected to anything. So why should we upgrade? Sagittarius, like if I change, a planet in Sagittarius can change what it believes, but maybe with Chiron there, I'm a little afraid to do that. Chiron in Capricorn, becoming respectable, becoming responsible, being mature. Any planet in Capricorn wants to make things serious and take something seriously, but the person might feel like I'm not worthy of respect, right? I could never manage this thing. I'm not mature enough or I'm not ready. That kind of thing with the rejection fears. In Aquarius, being different, approaching things differently, marching to the beat of one's own drummer. Any planet in Aquarius wants to or needs to march to the beat of its own drummer. And so this person might resist individuating to some degree for fear of being too different. Can't control it. The person is different, but might fear expressing it and living according, on his or her own rhythm. And then in Pisces, surrendering, merging, absorbing, feeling part of something. So Chiron in Pisces, and again, there's a lot of people here with Chiron in Pisces and Aries, remember? Most of the 60s, it's in Pisces, and then, wait, am I doing that wrong? Yeah, and then like 1968 to like 77-ish or something, it's in Aries. But anyway, lots of people born in the 60s and 70s in the group of Pisces and Aries. But in Pisces, not wanting to absorb something because it's overwhelming, right? So there's a sense of trying to not be sensitive because that sponge-like method of Pisces where osmosis or you absorb things or something, it's too overwhelming, or they fear being rejected, maybe even by spirit, like, similarly with the 12th house a little bit. Okay, so those are the houses and signs. With aspects, I wanted to give you the houses and signs ideas and send you to YouTube because I have a ton of videos on Chiron on YouTube that'll explain in more detail than I would have time for here. But with aspects, they're conversations in the psyche about sensitivity and vulnerability and what to do with it. Can I afford to feel this, right? So examples, 4th house in Taurus, just really quickly. Chiron in the 4th house, at home in my family of origin, how I was taught to deal with emotions, in working through the lens of Taurus. I need to slow down to deal with my needs, but other people might not get that everyone has a unique individual rhythm, right? They might be somehow trying to not have to feel suffering, so they're pushing through something. I need to slow down and really focus on what I need and really nurture in a very grounded, practical, day-to-day way, in real ways, my own needs. Okay. 6th house in Scorpio. 6th house would be that within unequal relationships, right? Being of service, fixing things, right? In Scorpio, I might have this really intense change I need to make, right? I need to really deal with something in a very deep way, but other people might say you're making too much noise or you're making too much a big deal about it. Just eat more kale, right? You're like trying to change something. You're trying to reinvent something from the inside out, and other people might, reject you for your complexity of how you are approaching the 6th house. First house in Virgo. First house is about independence and existing and like owning the body, and of course, like how the body appears, right? And in Virgo, the person might, you know, uh, be afraid to be very specific about dress or something, right? About how one appears, because if I'm too specific, I might be picked on, right? I just have this image of, I don't know where I was, but I was somewhere, and this guy, and I think it was like New Year's Eve or something. And this guy had like a hat, like a fedora with a feather on it that was like, I don't know, this feather was like literally like 3.5 feet long. So he's like at this bar in this club, and he's like turning, and this feather is, and like somebody might be really, really afraid of being picked on for being very specific about how one appears, right? And that can also be the person needs to make independent decisions, but is afraid of not being responsible, right? Virgo in the first house. Second house in Pisces. Chiron in the second house may have issues about self-worth. And the Chiron in Pisces part may have the person leaking energy, leaking money because of a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-respect. So the person might carelessly spend money and then later say, why don't I have any money? Oh, I hate myself because I don't have money. Something like that. Eighth house in Gemini. This is the house of, deep trusted vulnerability and sexual bonding and partnerships, really deep ones, and hitching your wagons to each other. In Gemini, flexibility within partnership, being flexible within these kinds of deep partnerships, letting things change, letting people evolve. With Gemini, there's always new input. That person might be afraid of that. And also sometimes being afraid of communication within that. Like, I know there's deep stuff that's coming up in you. I'm afraid to hear what it is because I think you're going to reject me. The person's like, no, I just had a bad burrito for breakfast. Okay. 10th house in Leo. 10th house is bringing something to the world that matters to you, or ambition, achievement, bringing something to the world is what I emphasize. In Leo, there's a unique perspective. It could be this person hides the inner artist until he or she is willing to be seen in his or her uniqueness. So that personal flair, or being funny, right? That person like rides the bus to work every day or rides the subway, and there's, the person will make sure not to be funny, to not stand out and be seen as weird or something. So there's just some random examples. Now, here we are. For more on Chiron, a couple things here, several things. One is the Chiron Natal Report that I wrote several years ago. I started it a while ago. I finished it a year or two ago. So your natal house and sign and aspects, and also transits and progressions to your Chiron and transits of Chiron. Then the Living in the Present Tense Natal Report involves Pluto, Chiron, Lilith, and Lucifer, just houses and signs, no transits, no aspects. But it's just a way of looking at becoming more present, looking at emotional healing issues on those 4 different archetypes. And then the book, Chiron 2012 in the Aquarian Age, The Key and How to Use It, that's on Amazon Kindle and also tdjacobs.com. And then also, over the next few months, starting mid-August, and then I'm going to do it for several months, I'm doing something called a Chiron confab. And if you have my Chiron Natal Report, that'll give you that overview as I talked about with transits, progressions, etc. House sign aspect and an essay on Chiron. But then in these small group, 5 people at a time, we're going to go deeper into it and talk about actual strategies given your chart, your makeup, your issues with Chiron, how to live more consciously with energetic and emotional sensitivity. So only open to people who have the report, because that's the basic overview of the Chiron thing. So I have one for Saturday, August 17th. I also picked Saturday, September 14th. And then I'm going to pick a few others because it's small groups. And I've been selling a lot of Chiron reports lately. And here I am doing this presentation to like promote my Chiron thing. So anyway, so I'm going to be doing these Chiron confabs for a few months, probably well into 2020 as well. Because I think these conversations about this unique perspective on Chiron and, okay, well, what does it mean for me, energy sensitive wise? Like, how do I feel rejected? To talk about how to heal that inner infant is extremely important. So anyway, you can get info on all this stuff at tdjacobs.com. And thanks for your time and energy with this. And I hope this presentation has been helpful. And thanks to Linda and everyone else at EA Zoom meetings for the opportunity to do this. All right. Take care.